All right. Um, all right. So let's begin. Welcome to the Smart Dialogue series. As you know, my vision for the dialogue series has been to provide a platform where voices of different disciplines, backgrounds, and perspectives can be heard. Today's session, much like the ones before, is rooted in the spirit of collaborative learning, because that's how we are able to advance our research. Um, So the way I just wanted to, before we begin, just lay out how we run our dialogue series for those of you who are new to this session. Our typical session is organized in a way that our guests present their research, and then we open for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then we open the floor for questions. Please raise your hand after the presentation if you have a question, or you can ask directly here. We're also going to be getting questions on our social media channels, so we'll try to read them out here as best as we can. Thank you again for joining us. Today we have with us Eva Liu, and she is a doctoral student in the Media Arts and Studies program, and we are very lucky to have her today for this presentation of the dialogue series. The title of our talk is Me Too Activism, without the Me Too hashtag, studying digital activism in authoritarian contexts. So some information about our guest, I'll read out what we have here. She got her MA in Gender Studies from Chinese University of Hong Kong, and her Bachelor of Social Science and Communication, and a minor in Sociology from Hong Kong Baptist University. Her research interest lies in feminist media studies, digital activism, and popular culture and fandom studies. Her dissertation explores the process of producing local feminist discourse identities and knowledge in contemporary China. She has won the Outstanding Teaching Assistant Honorable Mention and Outstanding Research Award from the School of Media Arts and Studies in spring 2023. So let's embark on an enlightening journey. I hope you leave today's session with new knowledge, ideas, and perhaps motivation for future collaboration. Let the dialogues begin. Eva, you're welcome to share your screen.
Thank you so much. Wait a minute. Why couldn't I find it? Okay, it's here. So thank you so much, Dr. Kahan. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to present my work. And the title of my speech is Me Too Activism Without the Me Too hashtag, Studying Digital Activism in Authoritarian Context. And the presentation of today is based on the paper I co-authored with Professor Han Ling, which published on Feminist Media Study this summer, entitled Me Too Activism Without Me Too hashtag, Online Debates Over Entertainment Celebrity Sex Scandals in China. Before I officially start my presentation, I want to review the timeline of this research. So before I came to OU, I worked as a research assistant at CUHK for a year. I helped with my co-author Professor Helling's her own research project, and she also wanted me to start a project of myself. So I have conducted a year-long digital ethnography on digital feminism in China. Digital ethnography is a method as ethnography in digital science. So we are kind of living on sites, watching, observing what people are talking about when we speak of gender and broadly defined feminism. And during my participant observation, because my paper is a 2 case studies. The first case happened in the summer, and we feel like there is a strong need we can write about this case alone for a single paper. We do not need to wait until the whole year-long project ends. And when we are preparing the manuscript, the second case happened, and we see a lot of similarity and differences between the 2 cases. So we make a multi-case studies. So back to what we are studying, hashtag activism, as most of you might be familiar with. refers to historically marginalized groups utilize hashtags to thread conversations together on social media platforms to advocate for social change, identity politics, and political inclusion. And the earliest use of hashtag function can be traced back to the year 2007 on Twitter. Now we call it X. It was actually invented by Twitter user. And then 2 years later, Twitter platform introduced a function called trending topics, which allow user to see what is the most popular hashtag, which is defined by algorithm in a certain region or globally. And back to the scholarly debates, what is the relation between social activism and ICTs, information communication technology? So there are two sides of the debate: technology as instrument versus technology as the context. So the technology as instruments sides are still following the sociology theory of social movements. They argue that the internet and social media becomes a equipment for the social activists to amplify their voices, to reach more audience, and to mobilize more people at the same time in a more efficient way. But later, some other scholars argue that digital media does not just supersize the activism, it radically changes how activism takes place. So technology is not only instrument, but also context. And later, Bennett and Segerberg coined the term connective actions, compare with what we know as collective actions. So it might be a new term for you, but I will explain with some comparison and make you understand. So think about like some hashtag activism that you are familiar with, like Me Too or BLM, and we seldom see the organizational coordination of action in these two movements. They are mostly run by individual actors. And in the old days, in the social movement organization model, it is the organization that distributed technological device to its members, like audio amplifier, like any other technological device. But in the case of hashtag activism, people use their own device to access to the activist information. So this is the large-scale personal access to multi-layered social technology. And we're expressing our ideas with personal action frames. There is no organizational frames. We're speaking on behalf of ourselves, not on behalf of an organization. And yes, so there are cases that like even a person has never subscribed to any feminist account, like feminist KOLs, but they may still see the Me Too post in their page because it's shared by people who they know. So it's shared over social networks. That is another unique aspect of connective actions. So in these scenarios, a formal organization is not something really essential. And connective action also receives some criticism, like it's often short-lived and not sustainable because there is no formal organizations that work on the same issue over a long period of time. And it's also criticized as the selectivism. So selectivism is a coined term like slack activism, selectivism, which means some people, they just share and like the post online, but they do not really take any action in their real life. So because they think they have already done what they can do in the online space. But I would argue that all these existing studies focus on the based on an assumption that internet is somewhere with freedom of expression, is somewhere free of censorship. But we have to reject the assumption of liberal digital space in this case, because that's not the case of many other countries, including mine. Think about the social media platforms we use in the US. We use Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. And some of you are watching these talks through YouTube. They are all owned by transnational corporations. But in China, the social media platform we use, like Weibo, WeChat, Douban, they're owned by domestic firms. And in this case, it allows the Chinese government to exert speedy and effective censorship through content removal. That's why some Chinese scholars, I'm sorry, water. Sorry. That's why some Chinese scholars argue that the logic of connective action is a suitable theoretical lens for studying feminist activism in an authoritarian state such as China. So, following the conventional SMO model, social movement organization, actually this kind of organization is hard to develop in the context of China. But in terms of connective actions, which are based on a loose connection between individual participants and a much more flexible way of organization, even it's always short-lived, but they are more likely to survive in a repressive environment. So what about Me Too movement in China? The year 2018 was always considered as China's Me Too year, because after its first exploration in the first day of the 2018, there were over 50 public allegations just in 9 months. And at the beginning, we could see the official response to the Me Too accusation, but later, the Me Too hashtag was blocked online, and many posts were removed later. And then the activists and the platform start to play a cat and mouse game. So when the Me Too hashtag was banned, activists start to use rice Bernie, because in Chinese, rice means me and sounds like me, and Bernie sounds like too. So rice Bernie is a variant for Me Too. And when rice Bernie get banned, people start to use 我也是, because 我也是 is a Chinese translation of Me Too. It's like a cat and mouse game. So whenever a hashtag was banned, people invent the other. But anyway, the Me Too movement in China reached a stalemate in late 2019, but that was not the end of the feminist struggles of against gender-based violence. So if we search Me Too on Weibo right now, you will not see a result page. You will see a sentence showing that according to the relevant laws and regulation policies, the result page is not displayed, which made me and my co-author think about what will Me Too movement be like if we can no longer use this hashtag. And during my observation in 2021, there are a lot of allegations against male celebrities in the entertainment industry of sexual misconduct, but none of the victims or whistleblowers use the hashtag #MeToo. But even though some Western media still frame some cases as part of the Me Too campaign, you can see some headlines from Western medias on the right-hand side. And we think that's the time to rethink Me Too in the context of, first, rising public gender awareness thanks to the previous movement, and intensifying state censorship, and also celebrity and fandom culture, because the studies of Me Too cannot really avoid the study of celebrity culture. And feminist celebrity scholars argue that celebrity gossip provides fruitful, vivid, and convenient empirical material that enables the public to negotiate what behavior is acceptable and imitable and what is not. And celebrity sex scandals can have feminist implications, according to many feminist celebrity scholars, because it provides empirical material for women to negotiate sexual norms. And that's maybe the reason why men always devalue the celebrity news. And we also look at the governance of entertainment celebrity in the context of China, because the Chinese government does not only require their entertainment celebrity to be a professional performer, but also to be a positive role model for the teenagers. Once some of them fail, and they will get named and shamed by the state media. And it's also the case in my study. And see the code here. So by publicly cracking down on a few iconic figures and selectively co-opting and endorsing others, the Chinese Communist Party aims to implicitly guide the performance of celebrity and the direction of emerging celebrity cultures. So here are our two research questions. First, how was this new round of Me Too campaign different from the earlier ones? And second, how does it contribute to China's digital feminism as a whole? We use a multiple case study design to study complex social phenomena and generate sync description. We use the replication logic to select the cases. So it's not the sampling logic I have to emphasize at the beginning, because it's not like doing a sampling from a certain population according to certain sampling strategy to have a more representative sample. It's not that case. So in the multiple case studies, we're using the replication logic. So if we have multiple cases with similar outcomes, it is the literal replication. But in my study, this is two cases with contrasting outcomes, which is a theoretical replication. Then we can ask why they have different outcomes. So here is a table to show you the two cases I'm going to analyze here: the sexual scandal of Chris Wu and the divorce scandal of Li Hongwang. They are both high-profile A-list male stars. I'm not sure about their popularity outside the Chinese-speaking region, but they were like Justin Bieber or Taylor Swift to us. I'm sorry, Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift. And they both have some transnational cultural backgrounds. Chris Wu is a Canadian Chinese, and Li Hongwang is a Taiwanese American from New York State. And the accusation against them both started with social media platforms. Their careers suspended after the whole incident, which provoked public discussion. And most importantly, none of the narrators in these two cases actually used the MeToo hashtag or identified themselves as part of this larger campaign. So in the first case, the misconduct is rape. The second case is emotional abuse, financial manipulation, plus extramarital affairs. The first is in public sphere, the second is private sphere. Chris Wu was accused by young girls who attended after work party with him, and Li Hongwang was accused by his ex-wife. Both of them get naming and shaming by state media as a bad role model, but Chris Wu also get an official ban. His social media accounts and all his previous artistic work, including music, films, and TV shows, are all removed from the streaming platforms. So that's one thing, like one tips of doing digital activism study in authoritarian context, that we have to collect real-time data, because it might happen that like a day later, even the social media account will disappear. So that's why you have to rely on your own personal archive. So the data I collected from multiple sources, social media data, mainstream news coverage, and government documentation, and it was collected and analyzed in the MaxQDA software. So to answer the first research question, how was this new round of Me Too campaign different from the earlier ones in China? So we have to do this comparison. The hashtag used in the previous round when or before the Me Too hashtag was banned in China, we can see people use Me Too or its variants. People use like Global for Jingyao or I am not a perfect victim either. Both are supportive of a female university student who accused a Chinese billionaire of rape. And I Will Be Your Voice is a hashtag campaign initiated by a Chinese male scholar who invited a female netizen to share their personal experience of being sexually harassed to him through direct message. And then he shared all these narratives to the public anonymously. So these hashtags are created by activists. They are constructive, but they are vulnerable to censorship. And what are people using right now? We made a table to summarize the most popular hashtags on Weibo regarding these two cases. And you can see the difference here. So they are now created by so-called Me Too activists. They are either the result of frequent search or they are created by news media agency. That is a platform-specific practice that when the social media account of mainstream media agency share their news article on social media, they will also create a certain hashtag, which is often descriptive, and you can see it's also fractured because it only reports the progress of a certain stage. But later, these descriptive hashtags by mainstream media is hijacked by the participants for the purpose that they do not intend it to, because it becomes a space for netizens to talk about the case per se and the gender hierarchy underlying it. So hashtag hijacking is a form of cyber content attack when a hashtag is used for a different purpose than the one originally intended. It mostly studied by PR and advertising scholars to doing case study of the failed PR campaign that the PR marketing hashtag was appropriated by the netizen for another purpose. But some digital activism scholars also argue that hashtag hijacking is an extension of the historical counter-public attempts. So here is an example that you might be more familiar with. So the 2014 New York PD PR campaign that the Twitter account of NYPD News invite a Twitter user to share a photo with a member of them. And later, this hashtag was hijacked by people who are not satisfied with the police overuse of power. And we can see the picture on the right-hand side. So a photo with a member of NYPD, but during the Occupy Wall Street. But what I want to emphasize here is hashtag hijacking is a technique, and technique is something neutral. It depends on who uses it and for what purpose. And it can also hijack the progressive campaign by conservative parties. So, for example, the Shout Your Abortion campaign, which is a campaign on Twitter that invites women to share their stories of abortion and call for more attention on the reproductive justice. But later it was occupied by people who are anti-abortion. And during the COVID, the hashtag campaign Doctors Speaks Up, which is originally for medical professionals to promote the use of COVID vaccination, but actually scholars find that more than 80% of the posts under it are from people who are anti-vaccination. And in this case, we would argue that hashtag hijacking become a new strategy for digital activism in the authoritarian context. But we still have to pay attention to two things. First, in these two cases, all these descriptive hashtags were outdated quickly. They only report the progress at a certain stage. And when the new stories new story going to, is aired, and then there are new hashtags replacing them. And that may be the reason why the platforms do not really deal with the hijack issue. And these two cases are covered by mainstream news media. But what if not? What if we do not have any hashtag to hijack? So that's the question we have to think about later. And to address the second research question, how does it contribute to China's digital feminism broadly? We argue it expands the scope of digital feminism because we see the politicization of a previously political field, celebrity news. In the past, celebrity news is just celebrity news. It's just serving a purpose of entertainment. But now we can discuss political issues of gender hierarchies in the celebrity news. And we also see the development of a new strategy of hashtag hijacking, which can at least avoid wasting feminist digital labor. Because once the hashtag is blocked, it means whatever activists have created online are disappeared. And there are some other problematic aspects in these two cases, which are also very important part of my paper, but I will not elaborate on them very detailed. So we look at the government documentation and state media reports, and we see a worrying tendencies that the states blame the sexual misconduct of the male celebrity, not only just as his individual bad act, but also as an outcome of what they call toxic fandom culture, because popular fans, who are mostly young women, give too much unconditional love and support to this young man, making them super arrogant and leading to this sexual misconduct at the end. And fans became the convenient scapegoat of public anger in these two cases. And as I mentioned before, the two male celebrities involved, they both have transnational cultural backgrounds. And in some discussion, we see how participants try to discursively construct this Batman as the cultural other, to attribute their sexual misconduct to their overseas socialization, like because they grow up in Canada or in America, that's why they become a playboy. And these two actually that divert public attention from the discussion of structural gender oppression. And a unique feature of connective action is people are using their personal action frames. There is no formal organization that can train its member to use inclusive language or have something like a code of conduct. So we can still observe many sexist language used in the public discussion and even cyber violence against some other women involved, which is exactly what Banner-Welser argued, that popular feminism is always intertwined with popular misogyny. So although just regarding the two cases, the outcomes are not that bad, but we are worrying about first its political potential because of the absence of a umbrella hashtag, and also its liberating potential because of some of the problematic practice in these cases, which still follow the dominant ideology. So a quick conclusion I want to draw here, why I pay attention to the digital activism in authoritarian context. We want to decentralize the studies of digital activism. We cannot assume what happens in the Western country will happen in the same way in the countries without the liberal environment. And we will also want to reject the assumption of freedoms of speech in the cyberspace. We want to look at the interplay of between the grassroots activists and the state power, and also emphasize on living on the sides, because this paper is part of a larger year-long digital ethnographies. And we also connect our analysis of the two cases to the broader context of Chinese social cultural environments. And what do I mean by living on sites is we're not just relying on the big data or computational method. We also need day-to-day observation over a long period of time and their interactions with our research subjects in order to generate sync description and also to gain insider knowledge and more localized knowledge of the digital activism in Chinese context. So it's not the end. I still have two pages to show like what I have done after this publication and what I'm watching right now. So I'm a supporter of the critical approach to disinformation studies, which we do not take disinformation as an individual bad act, but as a consequence of the power structure. The disinformation does not only mislead media audience, but also perpetuate some existing power hierarchies. So in this commentary piece, I focus on how the anti-feminist disinformation are widespread in Chinese cyberspace that misidentify feminists as traitors to their countries. It was included in the special issue of the Mixed Up Politics of Disinformation, Anti-Feminism, and Misogyny, which I think will be released in early spring next year. So in this case, in this commentary pieces, I apply a critical approach to this disinformation studies. I examine the power structure that facilitate the widespread of disinformation. And in many empirical studies, the solution would be either fact-checking or media literacy, but we do not think we can completely place the responsibility on individuals alone. We expect them to be more informed media consumer. We want to find solution elsewhere. So that's a work forthcoming. And what I'm keeping observing is what I call the hyper-transparency in Chinese digital space. So a big thing happening last year is since April 2022, all the Chinese social media platforms have started to display users' IP location. So when you post something online, you can see the screenshot on the left. So besides the time of your post, they will also show where are you right now when you post this thing. So they can say from Anhui province, from Liaoning province, from Jiangsu province. If I post anything, it will show from the USA. And it's not the end. So there is another policy in the making, is that the platform will start to show the users' real names to the public if they are popular influencers. It's not officially released yet, but the definition of popular influencer is something tricky, because how could you define popular influencer? How popular is popular influencers? And especially in this age, everybody could be a celebrity for 15 minutes online, and that could happen accidentally. And what if a person posts something that goes viral accidentally online, and then the next day the platform will display their real names to the public, which release the privacy that they do not intend to show. So I want to know, how will such hyper-transparency affect the social activism in the future? Personally, I'm not really optimistic about that, but the previous experience show us that where there is power, there is resistance. Where there is policy, there will be strategy. So let's see what will happen later. And 2 pages of references. Second page of references. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Eva. That was very insightful. Lots of food for thought and interesting questions that can emerge from this. First of all, I'd like to open the floor for questions. So you're welcome to ask any questions if you have any. Yes, Raymond, go ahead, please.
Hi, Eva. Thank you for a very good presentation. I have 2 questions. The first one, you mentioned that I think the Me Too hashtag was blocked at a point. I want to find out, how did you navigate that to ensure that, you were able to collect as much data before the blocking of the hashtag during your ethnographic study? And then the other question has to do with connective action as far as hashtags are concerned. I want to know, what can you advise future activists who are interested in using hashtags so that, in their campaigns, they don't experience this pitfall of having, hashtags being short-lived in terms of outcomes or results?
Thanks for your question. So one thing I have to clarify is the Me Too hashtag was actually blocked before I started this research. So it was blocked in the year 2018. But I started this research later because I don't want the Western feminist community and academia to see that Me Too hashtag was banned in China and the Me Too movement ended in China. It's not that thing. We just change how we do this, even without a hashtag, because I also think because when I submit this article to the journals, the peer review editor also asked, like, how do you define them as Me Too movement, as they are not using Me Too hashtag? And I was saying that I do not think the activism can just be narrowly defined by what hashtags people use here. And so back to your first question, how can I collect data before the data, the social media data was censored? Or in some cases, it is the people who posted voluntarily delete it for some reasons. And there's no standard answer, there's no better answer. The only issue is be quick. So when living in this environment for too long, you will have a sense what kind of social media data are vulnerable to censorship. And then that's the time you have to get it quickly. Even you're not working with your computers, you can use you can use your smartphone to take a quick screenshot. And that's how I deal with that. That is stressful because digital angiography is not like, surfing internet online all day and taking some notes. That's not the whole thing. It's literally a stressful process because you're afraid of missing out. And there's no boundary of on-site or off-site. And also have your personal archive because you will have a lot of data. That's the time for you to have a database and to categorize your all your data. And any advice for the activists? I cannot say advice because it's always, I always go behind them as the frontline activists teach me, it's not I teach them. And yes, there are still some other campaigns that use hashtag, but they're usually cultural campaign. And for example, so one of the most popular hashtag right now in Chinese social media space is called Seeing Working Women. So that's a more like a media or culture campaign because it addressed the issue of women's underrepresentation, especially working women's underrepresentation in media, because if the media interview a mixed gender team, they tend to interview the man inside, even the woman as the leader. And that's why some media professions and feminist activists create this hashtag and continue to contribute content to it. It's still alive right now. Nobody can guarantee the future. But one reason I guess it survived is it's not really visible because it was never on the trending topics. And then it's about cultural issue, not political or social issue that might not seem too sensitive in the eyes of the people who are doing the censorship. And that's why I'm thinking right now. I hope it can answer to your question.
Yes, thanks so much.
Great. Any other questions? All right. So I actually had a very important question. So first of all, I think it's very fascinating that hashtags can be used for activism, even when they're not used in the sense of the actual hashtag not being used and alternatives. People find ways to get their message across. So what really caught my attention was when you mentioned hashtag hijacking. And I think that's a very interesting phenomena that those of us who are very active in social media, we might have noticed, especially around events or some activism going on a range of topics around the world. So from the very word hashtag hijacking, it has a very negative connotation. Do you think there is anything positive that can come out of it too?
Yeah, so hijack is not a good term, I mean, in the daily conversations, in the dictionary meanings. But actually, a lot of early study of hashtag hijacking are criticizing it and or giving implications to marketing professionals, like how could we avoid this happen? But we also see the potential of hashtag hijacking and see the NYPD examples that people appropriate that marketing campaign for the NYPD to showcase the issue of police overusing power in the street protest. But that would be quite different in my study, because this is what I'm studying is the hashtag created by news media and for the newspapers, and then later the participants appropriate that hashtag as a space to negotiate sexual norms, to have those public discussions. I was kind of like temporary public speaks, because if it's Me Too, then it's still alive right now, and it's still a public sphere that people can visit day to day, and there are new posts published under it every day, and even until now. But this descript hashtag, they're only being super visible for a very short time and get outdated, because there are new hashtag that can replace them in the trending topics. I seldom use the positive, negative binary, because I want to see something more nuanced because I'm studying digital activism in an authoritarian context. We cannot really compare everything with other contexts, and if there is this public space, even it's a temporal public space, but it's better than nothing. It's better than not having a hashtag to hijack.
Right.
It's not like we cannot talk about this anymore. We can always find a way to let people, even like many participants, they're just talking about this case per se. They're blaming a man, an individual man. But when they're reading others' comments, they might realize it's not only an individual man's bad act, it's a result of a structural oppression of imbalanced power relations. So I would say better than nothing, although we still have to realize its limitations in some ways.
Right. So thank you. I think that's again very interesting to look at, and this also lets us discover new avenues of research, new topics that are worth exploring. And one of them could be, for example, just as food for thought, the role of algorithms in suppressing hashtags, for example. So whether sites like X or Facebook are even, so if there might be hashtags related to an issue, are they making them salient or not? Or are they to some ways, not highlighting them? And I'm not talking about authoritarian context. I'm just talking about regular Western or global context where there might be cases where certain hashtags or points of view are not promoted. And I think that is actually going against the spirit of democratic and open communication for all. And I think those are very interesting areas to look into. So lots of interesting avenues for research that can emerge from this. Fascinating stuff. It was great, and we really enjoyed listening to that presentation. Thank you very much. So we wrap up today's enlightening session, and I'd like to thank you, Eva, for your presentation, and others who are joining and attending and listening to the dialogue series. See you again with another insightful session right here with me. Keep connected and have a wonderful day.